Good evening, guys, and happy Friday to all of your sunshiny faces. Guys, so sad. Jack's final home football game of his high school career was today. Like I said, it was just so, like, bittersweet. And weirdly enough, too, it is not really, like, sunk in or hit me yet that, like, it's the end. Like, it's over. Like, he has one game left and then that's literally it. But his senior night, where they have the last home game for like the season that the seniors will be able to play in, was tonight. So like I said too, I just think that is so, like, it's so weird too, because his freshman year, I think I told you guys, I remember thinking, like, his senior year is never going to come. Like, it is going to take forever for that to finally happen. And just like all of a sudden I was like, they had 2 years of the really weird sort of, like COVID lockdown, his sophomore year where they had to play in the spring, and then just within, like a couple months they turned it around and had to play another season after that. And then they ended up playing the varsity, what's that called? His junior year. And so, it was like such a small gap that year sort of runs together, and I sort of just feel like that was just like almost a continuation, like it was just sort of 1 year all mushed together. But no, it was 2 separate years, and like that's why I'm like, I almost feel like Jack, while again there was a lot of people too, like especially during lockout, that didn't get to play those spring sports and things like that, or the spring sports. Like I know a lot of baseball that year and everything like that, like, those seniors and players and stuff like that missed out on a whole season of their sport, and that really stinks. And again, we were fortunate enough where, because of our school and, the timing too for football, that they were actually able to play the following spring then for that season, which again too was really weird, but, and we'll hopefully never actually happen again. But it's just so bizarre, like, to play football in spring. And so again, while they were doing that and everything, again, I'm just like looking back and I was like, that was only like not, like last spring, that was like 2 springs ago, sort of thing. And like, that's just really weird. So again, like that, I just feel like they missed out sort of on a lot of, like what felt like a full football season. And again, to them being so close together, to me that just sort of runs together as one season. So I'm like, Jack only played 3 years of football. Like, he didn't play 4 years of football, but he did, so I don't know, it's just so weird. And like I said too, just remembering like his freshman year, I was just thinking to myself, like, because I remember like we stayed to watch like the varsity games like we normally do, but he was playing at the frost-off level, his freshman year. And so I remember though them playing that game where it was the senior night for those seniors, and I remember thinking, that's never gonna come for Jack. Like, that's, so far away. Like, that's never gonna happen. And now that it has, I'm like, that's my last little brother to like play, high school football. And that's so sad, because like I've got all kinds of, which I'm wearing today. I have a bunch of different like shirts and stuff like that I'll say like, oh, that's my little brother out on the field, or like all kinds of stuff like that. Like that's sort of like the one that I'm wearing now, but I've got like a couple t-shirts and stuff like that. And I was like, while I can still go and again support the school and stuff like that, because again too, my dad is still most likely going to be coaching next year. Matthew and possibly even Jack maybe would come back to coach as well. But because of that, it's like I can still rep the school, but like, it's no longer my little siblings that are out on that football field. And like I said too, other than that one gap year between Matthew and Jack, like I was in high school for 4 years, then Matthew was in high school for 4 years, and then there was one gap year, and then Jack was in high school for now 4 years. And so, but we were consistently always going to football games, like, again, ever since I was back in high school several years ago. And then even too, a little bit before that, I didn't really go to the games, but like middle school age and stuff like that. But my dad used to take Matthew to the high school football games because he used to play youth football. And so a lot of times they do like special things like to honor or represent like the youth football kids and stuff like that. Like in like upcoming years and stuff like that, they would do special things for them as well, which was really cool. But I never ended up personally like going to any of those ones that I can remember, like my freshman, or like my like middle school years or anything like that. I don't ever remember going to any of those games. But my freshman year, I don't think I missed a game of football, and all the way up through, I think, again, all of the home games at least, I think I went to every single one, and then every year following that too. So it's like, once again too, like, I'm out of high school now. Matthew's out of high school. Jack's gonna be out of high school. Again, possibly my dad will still be coaching and stuff like that, but it's like none of us will be in school anymore. Like, it's not me, my siblings, anything like that that'll be in the high school. Like, there's nobody I know personally in the school anymore to be like, oh yeah, like, you know, my brother goes to school, you know, at the high school or whatever. Like, I don't get to say that anymore. And obviously, again, I'm out of high school, so it's just such a weird sort of like thing now to be like, you know, like, again, I don't know, just like, it still hasn't really hit me yet too, because I'm like, well, there's still a game next week, you know, but like, I don't know, it's just really sad too, like, that, you know, that's sort of it, like, that's over. Like, also too, that I don't have a personal connection to anybody that's out on the football field. You know, like, there's still a couple of kids, like I was telling you guys, that I did coach that are still going to be on the team. Like, one is actually a freshman still, and then there's a couple of you know, maybe they're sophomores or something like that, sophomores, juniors, I think, or something along those lines. But there's a couple kids that should still be around for, again, a little bit, you know, a little bit of time still. And then Jack's actually, his best friend has got a couple of younger siblings that do play football, and one of them is like really, really good right now, that's like in youth football. And then he's got another brother that's actually a freshman right now. And so again, like, you know, we can always go and still, like, you know, support them and stuff like that. But it's just so weird too, because like, even when Matthew was in high school, like, you know, it's also too, like, that whole like parent group a little bit too. Like, you know, you're sort of, you know, with all of the, you know, like, you know, the families and stuff like that, and you sort of get to know them and everything like that through the 4 years that, you know, you are all in the bleachers together and stuff like that. And like, I noticed that too, again, with Matthew. It was like his group ended up changing from what, you know, was his, you know, like, group of parents and stuff like that, and now it's going to be a whole different group of parents and stuff like that from what it was, you know. And so, you know, like, in the families and stuff like that. And so, like I said, well, Jack's one really good friend, again, siblings will still be playing, you know, most likely for a couple more years, hopefully. You know, like, again, we know some of them. Again, too, I know, like I said, the one, it was actually Matthew played with his older brother in high school, and they knew each other since, like, they played t-ball together. But his younger brother's, I think, a year or 2 years younger than Jack, and we coached him in youth football, but he's one of the ones that'll still be around. Like, again, we can still cheer him on and stuff like that. But you know, just like, I don't know, it's just, it's a different kind of feeling, like, not really being a part of that, because it was the same thing too, like, my like, that one sort of weird gap year where Jack wasn't in high school yet and Matthew just graduated. Like, we knew still some of the kids that, again, Matthew played with already, you know, like his senior year and stuff like that. But it was just sort of a different kind of feeling. And I remember being like, it's kind of weird going to these games, not, again, like, being like, oh, let's go Jack, you know, sort of thing, like being there to be able to cheer him on and stuff like that. You know, instead it had to be like, oh, you know, like, let's go so-and-so, or nice run numbers, you know, whatever, just because it's like, that's not my little brother, you know, like, I don't get to, you know, cheer him on in sort of the same sense. And so, I don't know, like I said, it's just, like, it's really sad. It's just, like I said, it hasn't really hit me that much yet, like, that's sort of it, you know, because I'm like, oh, well, you know, we still have next year. And like I was telling you guys too, like, especially with the coach that we have now, I'm like super looking forward to, you know, again, to like what these kids can do. But like, then I'm thinking about it and I'm like, yeah, but like, Jack's not gonna be there, like, you know, it's not, you know, like, is it gonna feel like that again? Is it gonna feel different? Like, you know, it's not like those kids, you know, sort of thing. And like, that's why I feel like it's like sort of special for like my dad, because like he coaches those kids regardless. And he actually, his specific, like, he coaches the offensive line, which Jack doesn't play. So like, those kids that he coaches, like, you know, aren't even Jack. You know, he barely sometimes sees him like at practice, really, where, you know, he's influenced, you know, especially too, because like my dad's on offense, Jax plays defense, like, you know, he's completely on the opposite side from, you know, one another. And so, you know, like, the, you know, like, they're not involved that much with each other's, you know, like, practices and game, you know, situational stuff and things like that, even sometimes too, where where, you know, so like for my dad, it's like, you know, he's coaching up sort of like a different like group of kids, you know, sort of thing. And so, you know, for him, obviously it's still his son that's out on the field, but, you know, he also has a different group of kids that, you know, he wants to see thrive as well, you know, because that's his skill position that he coaches and stuff. And so, you know, like I said, it just is, I think, a little bit different, you know, slightly for him just because he coaches. But, you know, like, I don't know what I do with my Fridays anymore. Like, I've not known a fall where I've not, you know, like I said, since before I was in high school, that I haven't been going to football games, you know, high school football games on Friday nights. And this is just such a weird thing that, like I said too, like, and Jack even said it, he's like, I already told all those guys, like, I'm gonna be back in the stands cheering you guys on for the next couple of years while you guys are still in high school. You know, like, he's still gonna be there even if he can't be, like, you know, like some type of coach or something like that or whatever, because he kind of wants to do that also. Whereas Matthew definitely wants to, and that's sort of what he's getting his degree in, is in sports, I think management or something like that, or psychology, sports psychology, one of those two. But in the hopes of like doing something related to sports, and he really loves coaching football. So, you know, again, he really wants to do that. But, you know, Jack is, you know, like, I don't know, like, might maybe not want to really be a coach even too, but again, he just really wants to see again those kids do really well that, you know, are still, you know, again, like his you know, littles sort of in you know, the high school program. So like I said, it was a tough loss. I didn't even tell you guys really what ended up happening. So it was tough because the game could have pretty much been tied at halftime. What was really unfortunate was that they scored, I think, their first possession maybe. Then we ended up going, and I think we got stopped and we didn't score. I actually think that the score, we were down 2 scores to nothing, and then we did end up scoring. And I think the thing was too is that they missed the field goal, so they got 1 field goal, missed 1, so I think it was 13. Then we went down the field, scored, got 6, and then we also ran the extra point in, so we ended up with 8. And then this was sort of the part that was a little bit tough, was that we ended up stopping them on defense. I think they honestly only had the ball 3 times in the half, maybe, or 4 times. I think there was one time when we stopped them. And, oh, so we didn't actually score on offense, though. We scored on defense. So I think it was 4th down. They went to punt it, but it was a bad snap. So then the kid tried to throw the ball away, but instead our stud running back was actually playing defense at the time, ended up just taking the ball literally out of the kid's hands. Matthew goes, I think he was trying to throw it, but I couldn't even tell. And all of a sudden we look, and our kid, his run, which again, they were pushed pretty far back from the defense, so they were trying to kick from like the 10-yard line or 5-yard line or something like that. So our kid just literally pulled the ball out of the kid's hand, ran it in for 5 yards, and ended up getting a touchdown. Then the offense ran it in for the extra 2 points. So that was how that ended up going. But again, they tried to punt there, so the defense did a really good job stopping them. Then again too, we went and we didn't end up scoring. And then defense came back out and we tried to stop them, and we did. They went to go and punted away, and they ended up, we ran into the kicker. So that's an automatic first down, and then they ended up scoring on the drive after that. However, there was also, then right before halftime, we ended up, which I don't even understand how this can happen. And my dad said he was looking over the film, and they were sort of analyzing what actually ended up happening. It looked like the, what's it called, like our chain gang ended up dropping the chains because it looked like they thought it was first down. So it was like, I don't even know, like, I think the ball was on like the 11 or 12 yard line, something like that. So in order to, we either had to get the touchdown or else we had to get to the 1 or 2 yard line to be able to get the first down. So it looked like we should have had it, and again too, but I guess the chain gang thought that we did wind up getting a first down on this particular play, where it was 4th down, and then we ended up pushing the ball, and the kid literally was just like on the edge of the end zone. So then, like I said, it looked like the chain gang dropped the chains, because then at that point it's just the down marker. So they thought that we had the first down already. The referees didn't signal that we did, though. And then they said no, they didn't. So then they had them come out and measure it, but the chains had actually moved, because when they dropped them, they weren't in the proper spot where they were supposed to be. So but like I was telling Matthew too, I was like, this is ridiculous, because it should have, like, I don't know, like, first off, they shouldn't have dropped them, but then on top of that too, the referee should have actually sort of like been aware that we couldn't have gone any closer to the goal line without it being just the down marker. And so it, like, without being on the 1 yard line. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but like, we couldn't have gotten any closer to not getting in the end zone without it at least being a first down. And so it wasn't, but I was like, how? So then they came out and measured, and they were like, no, you're still short. And we were like, well, you can't be short because we couldn't have not been in the end zone without, like, and if you say weren't in the end zone, then we couldn't have not gotten the first down because of where the ball was. And so I don't know, it was just sort of ridiculous, because like the 10 yards that we had to have gotten would have been in the end zone, so they shouldn't have had the box. So like, I don't know, like I said, it was just sort of crazy. So then they were like, no, the other team stopped us from getting in the end zone and or getting the first down. So then we turned the ball over on downs when we were literally at the 1 yard line. So like I said, that was kind of crazy, and the game could have been different had we not ended up running into the kicker, and they would have punted it away and we would have gotten the ball back, because they scored, like I said, on that drive. And then also too, if we would have just ended up actually getting it the 1 yard extra or whatever it had to have been to gotten in the end zone, the game most likely would have been tied at halftime. So then I think by the end, we ended up, I think, with at least 24, 28 points or something like that. And I think that by the end of the game, they scored 52 or 58 or 56 or something like that. I don't know. It wasn't an insanely close game by the time second half sort of rolled around, but we ended up throwing one interception. I know we fumbled the ball multiple times, which again too, it was freezing cold out. It was also downpouring, so we couldn't throw the ball. The other team hardly threw the ball too. It was just, they ended up not fumbling it as much as us. Our kids, apparently the ball was extra slippery for us and he could not hang on to it. So like I said, by that time it just seemed like the game was, you know, kind of out of hand, and that's what sort of stunk too. But I will also say too, the referees were absolutely horrible. And I will say this, guys, I know I'm critiquing the refs a lot of the time, honestly. The refs were horrible, and I started to feel bad for the other team, because honestly there was a lot of instances where, again, like, they got the running into the kicker thing right. Again, it wasn't entirely the referee's fault about that first down not being a touchdown, not being a first down sort of thing. That was really more the chain gang's fault. They, again, shouldn't have dropped the chains without a signal ahead of time, and like all that stuff. So then when they measured it, they should have, like, if they wouldn't have dropped the chains, then but when they measured it, it would have most likely been correct and we would have had the first down. But because they dropped the chains thinking that it was, then they weren't in the proper spot exactly, I guess, for like them to measure it. So then it did make it look like we were short. But like I was saying, like, we couldn't have been any closer without the ball having crossed the end zone and broken the play, which then signals a touchdown. So like I said, that's not totally on the referee's fault, but common sense would tell you that that would have been the case, because the ball couldn't have been any closer. But there were multiple cases where the guy on our sideline, the referee, was throwing flags for stuff that me and Matthew kept going, what is that? What is he throwing a flag on? Where like their guy would wind up tackling one of our kids and he'd throw a flag, and I was like, what was wrong with that? And they'd be like, personal foul. And I was like, can you not tackle anymore? Like, it was seriously that bad. Like I said though, I felt bad for the other team. Like, and then at the end of the game, the referees just stopped throwing flags altogether, and they started like really, like, stuff was getting really dirty. Like honestly, it was our last offensive drive, and again, this was when the other team was crazy up by, like, you know, again, 20 plus points really. But like, Jack was just getting held constantly, and again too, like, there was just a lot of, like, then too, there was also this one kid that ended up tackling one of our kids. It was actually Jack's best friend. He ended up picking him up off the ground and tackling him, and I was like, if you guys were calling all this other stuff that was like for every little tackle they were throwing a flag, because they were like, personal foul, personal foul, and that wasn't, I was like, what on earth? Like, it was just so inconsistent. On top of that too, there was this other play that I even told my dad, and me and Matthew were both like, this doesn't make any kind of sense, right? So we get a touchdown. We go for a 2-point conversion. However, our kid runs to the outside and gets met by this kid, and the kid is like a brick wall. Did not let our kid into the end zone, and he ended up then falling out of bounds. I thought it was a beautiful stop and a beautiful football move, and I was like, wow, our kid just, you know, got stood up basically and couldn't make it in the end zone. They threw a flag on a personal foul that they said was after the play. So I was like, okay, so did the kid say something? You know, because if the kid's like, you know, like swearing or cussing or something like that, then, you know, sometimes the referees will wind up throwing flags, you know, just so, again, things don't get out of hand. So the then referee signals that it's a dead ball foul, which means that the foul, you know, the yardage that the other team, you know, that we would get, gets assessed on the next play. But they let us replay the down to get into the end zone the second time for the extra point, which we did. So this is where I'm saying if I was the other team, I would have been livid, because that's not, like, right. And then they ended up, like, saying, oh, no, it was actually on the play. And then me and Matthew were both going, but what happened on the play? Because literally the kid did nothing other than stood there and stopped our guy from getting into the end zone. So, like I said, I was just, like, completely, like, in awe of, like, these referees. And like I said too, I told you guys sometimes where I'm like, oh my gosh, these referees were horrible and everything was going against us and stuff like that. I legit felt bad for the other team, because if that was me, I most likely would have been like, and my dad said too that there was one time where our coach though was getting mad because one of their kids ended up, they had too many men on the line, so you could only have 7 men on the line. They had apparently 8 that then they moved in motion. So then when our coach was apparently trying to ask them about this, they said they came up with some crazy thing about how, oh well no, because he was in motion, like he could be on the line. And my dad's like, no, that's not the rules. You can't be in motion on the line, because you still would have had 8 men line up on the line. And so, like, it was just this long whole thing that where this referee was trying to explain to them the proper rules, and they're like, no, it wasn't, because, like, the only case is that if they have 2, like, one's in the backfield and one's on the line, they can switch, but you still can't have, you can only have 7 on the line at the same time. So when you guys see like a wide receiver checking in with the referee and everything like that, that's to make sure if they're on or off. So like I said, like this was one of the other things, but the referee was trying to give him a completely different story as to why it was legal, and not even like, oh no, like we missed that, or like, you know, like he was trying to defend his reasoning for not saying it was a foul. Like I said too, there was a couple of like where they tackled our kid in bounds, but then they were trying to say that it was a personal foul because they tackled him out of bounds. And I was like, no, because the clock was still running. They still ran the clock because our kid was tackled in bounds, but they tried to say it was a personal foul because he got tackled out of bounds. Like, and that was against them. So like I said, when I'm trying to say that sometimes there are high school referees that are just awful, these were one of those groups of referees that were just absolutely awful. And like I said too, we got so many bailed out of so many situations because the other team ended up with flags that me and Matthew especially were both going, what was the flag on that? Like we were starting to take bets like on like, what do you think that one was on? Because we literally couldn't figure it out. We were like, probably some type of personal foul, but what it was, we have no clue, because again, where the kid was involved in a play, like, you know, like it had nothing to do with that, unless again they were saying things or whatever. But no, a lot of times they'd be like, no, it was a, you know, like they pushed him out of bounds, or you know, it was a late hit or like something like that. And then we were like, no, it wasn't. Like the kid was definitely still in bounds when you guys blew the whistle, like, you know, or threw the flag or whatever. Like, I don't know, it was just super bizarre. And like I said too, there was a couple again that did not go our way, but there was a lot that I felt like was against the other team. And I actually legitimately, even though they were beating us, I sort of felt bad for them, because I was like, these are bad calls, and they seem to have been going against the other team a lot. So like I said, I am not like, you know, when especially it seems like when I see something where I'm like, oh, that was a really bad call by the referees, obviously it's when it's against my team, I'm going to say that, even if maybe it wasn't that horrible of a call. But especially in this situation, when I start feeling bad for the other team because of how bad these calls are, that's when you know the referees are really, really, really bad. So again, guys, I am, you know, like, the game overall didn't exactly end up like we wanted. This was a team that honestly we possibly also could have beat. The tough thing is that this team especially has always, since Matthew played them, has always been a really, really fast outside running team. And it was funny though, because Jack, again playing middle linebacker, stuffed the middle so much that they stopped running up the middle, because Jack had actually, which was really unfortunate, 3 plays right in a row where he stopped the kid at the line of scrimmage 3 times in a row. The 4th play, they ended up throwing a pass, and none of our defensive backs are back there at all. The kid ran clean into the, untouched into the end zone, and they threw a beautiful pass right to him. Whereas, like I said, Jack literally stopped everything. And then, you know, there's one play where, again, somebody, I guess, wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing, and the kid went scot-free in the end zone with the football. And so, like I said, that was tough. But they stopped running it up the middle because Jack was just there clogging everything up, and so it was amazing. But they, especially too, like I was saying though, like, since Matthews played them, which is why he actually, I think, had the most tackles against this team that he has ever had. I think it was like 15 or something crazy like that. I don't know, like solo tackles actually. But he played cornerback, and so it was because they ran everything to his side, and he just kept racking up tackles this game because they were really fast kids out to the outside. And so they ended up, like I said, running a lot to him. And so he actually, I think, the most solo tackles that he'd ever had was in that game in particular, and, you know, against this team. And so, like I said, that's normally where they always wind up running, and, you know, like I said, that's just their sort of like offense that they run. But our kids, especially on defense, it seems like, are not insanely or super fast. So it was like once the kid got around to the outside, it was like our, you know, safety basically had to tackle him. So they were doing a lot of running. They weren't passing the ball very much, but again too, when they were, nobody was back there to defend it. So you know, like I said, it sort of stunk. But especially, like I said, with Jack, and my dad even said too, this was probably Jack's best game that he's ever had, because he was involved. Like I said, he had at least 3, I think, solo tackles right in you know, a series right in a row, and then he was also involved in a ton more tackles where it was like at least 2, him and 1 other person, you know, involved in the tackles. He was out there making tackles like crazy. But again, it's just, I don't know, it's just really sad. Like, you know, football, you know, is kind of, I don't know what, you know, like I said, the future sort of is gonna hold. And it's so weird because I just, like, it's been a constant, you know, for every year for the last, you know, pretty much now 9 years almost, you know, I'm like, oh, you know, I'm gonna have a brother pretty much that's gonna play, you know, football. Like I said, other than that one sort of off year, but we were still going to the football games for the most part. You know, so, but, you know, always sort of that thing. And now to be like, oh, you know, like, we might, you know, might still go to the games, but, you know, won't have anybody that I can personally, you know, like I said, brother that I get to cheer on, you know, sort of like, you know, I don't know, just sad, sort of. So still 1 football game left, which again will be a pretty hopefully fun game. The other team, I know that they'll be playing next week, is kind of the same. They're very speedy, fast, a lot of times to the outside. So I don't know so much to the outside, but they're just a very fast team. So like I said, going to be a little tough on defense, but hopefully on offense they'll be able to do some. Like I said, we were able to do some. It was just, I think also too, the weather conditions really ended up stinking because it was freezing cold, guys. Matthew checked the temperature, I think it was 42, but real feel I think was 39, and that was like at about halftime, so I know the temperature probably dropped a little bit more by then. And it was also downpouring. I had rain poncho. We ended up losing an umbrella during the frost off game because it was blowing around, and it blew and, you know, like got blown backwards and then broke all the little things, and so we had to throw the umbrella away. But as far as rain ponchos, those worked, and we were able to use those for the football game, and so we stayed dried through pretty much the entire thing. It was downpouring pretty bad out there. So anyways though, guys, I'm gonna take a shower and get to bed. I will see you guys all in tomorrow's vlog. If you guys did enjoy today's, make sure you guys give a big old thumbs up. If you guys are new, we'd love if you'd subscribe, and I'll see all of your sunshiny faces tomorrow. So bye, guys.